There's been a persistent campaign in right-wing media against the vaccine, but generally it's not very specific. Sometimes in the independent circles it is, but on Fox News and on Newsmax, actually generally, the form that it comes in is we're not saying don't get the vaccine. We're not saying the vaccine will kill you. We're just doing a whole bunch of coverage that implies that there's something to be fearful about, something to be suspicious about. We're getting you to think about this less through a lens of public health and more about you being a patriot or whatever. And we have questions. That's the thing that always comes up. Tucker Carlson can't stop talking about the questions that he has. He never asks them, he just says that he has them. He's never specific. And that turns out to be a wise thing because when you go specific in your opposition of the vaccine, you can look like even more of a doofus. And we have an example of that. Newsmax had a doctor on, Angelina Farella, and here is what she had to say about the vaccine.
No, you know how you fight a pandemic and how you fight disease? You treat it. Why don't we try treating early? Why don't we do that? This is the first time ever that we don't have guidelines. Where are the guidelines from Mayo Clinic? Where are the guidelines from Hopkins? Where are the guidelines from your esteemed place, Dr. Schaffner? Where are they? What are we supposed to do? Why are we not treating these patients? You know, this is ridiculous, and it doesn't even have to be the controversial medication that is FDA approved for the last 50 or plus years. So we can treat this with albuterol, with budesonide, with prednisone, with azithromycin. We can use vitamin D, we can use zinc, we can use quercetin, we can use N-acetylcysteine. We can use all kinds of things to treat this virus. But you know what? There has been an absolute blackout on what primary care physicians can do to treat and get these patients well. That's how you crush a pandemic.
Okay, so there's a lot of nonsense there about vitamin D and zinc, and we will get to that. But she gave me what I've been asking for. I have been saying, just tell me what your questions are, and that kook asked some specific questions. So for instance, where are the guidelines from the Mayo Clinic? Well, here are the guidelines from the Mayo Clinic on coronavirus, how to diagnose it, how to treat it. It's all available on Google. I don't understand most of it. I'm not a doctor. I'm starting to question that she might not be either, but it is available freely. She said, where are the guidelines from Johns Hopkins? Well, here are the guidelines from Johns Hopkins. Again, it is a fundamental set of guidelines for the diagnosis and treating of coronavirus. She also said, Schaffner, who is a doctor who wants you to vaccinate, who was also on that Newsmax thing, she said, where's your places? Well, they do. She said, where should we treat people? Dr. Schaffner, why aren't you responding to that? Well, Vanderbilt University, they have a section on their website about using monoclonal antibodies as a treatment for coronavirus. All of this, I'm not Ken Klippenstein. Nobody leaked this secretly to me. This is all on the internet. All of these places, and I'm sure the CDC and the WHO and all these other organizations have a bunch of information about how to diagnose it, about how to treat it. That's all available. And she is a doctor a year and a half into a pandemic that apparently didn't even Google if that stuff was available. So the question of why don't we have guidelines? No, we do actually. Why aren't we treating them? No, we are actually. What do you think is happening in these hospitals? These very specific questions are dumb as hell. And that is why people like Tucker Carlson, who are better at the grift, don't ask those questions. He will never allow himself to be pinned down with a question like, where's Johns Hopkins guidelines? Because they're out there. So he will just say, I have questions, whereas she opens herself up to look like a moron in that way.
Yeah, Also adding to this is the idea that they're bringing on, they found a doctor who will say what they want them to say.
Yeah,
and that's it. And that's one of those things that Newsmax does fantastic jobs about. Not only that, but they're not saying it. They're insulated from that. They learned their legal liability issues by thanks to people who make voting machines. And they're very young and they're figuring all this out. But they're also stumbling into other things that are utilized by other networks where they bring in something that is not hotly contested. Is it the subject they're talking about is not hotly contested, yet they trot in two doctors to present both sides of the issue. And they have and to bring it to discuss medical issues that disproportionately affect older individuals and folks with comorbidities. Did you see what her title was? She's a director of pediatrics.
Mm-hmm.
So they bring in, doesn't affect kids as much, but they found someone to say that. Now, in terms of things that you can treat it with, I don't know. I don't know if there's a difference between what's on the website for the CDC in terms of their guidance on how to be treated for these things and the official guidance from the CDC to these doctors on how to treat it. But that doesn't mean that there aren't treatments for it and that people can't share medical information on how to treat people. But how is that part of this discussion? Yeah, and how is that part of this discussion from her and not get vaccinated? Yeah. And not like we have an emergency use authorization. That kind of information is already categorized as different from official FDA approval, but in this situation, it seems to be working.
Yeah.
And part of it is, I feel like she's focusing on lack of guidance in one specific way when everybody's in the trenches. All her colleagues are in the trenches dealing with this. And yeah, I'll take her, medical opinion under advisement, but I'm also going to take my doctor's medical opinion under advisement. Yeah. And all those things that I see on all those websites that you're showing, I would trust when I talk to doctors about this who have themselves gotten vaccinated. I feel like that's most of the information I need to know. And also the people that are telling me that it's up to me whether I get vaccinated or not. I'm not seeing whether those folks are I'm not taking what they're telling me to do under advisement. I think what speaks volumes is when they're asked if they're vaccinated, they either say yes or I'm not gonna tell you. And I know for a fact that a lot of these folks are vaccinated. So those actions speak a lot louder than the words, especially when the words are motivated by some kind of monetary interest and some voting block interest to be lying to me.
Yeah. Yeah, and with her, I don't know. I don't know her. I don't know if she is vaccinated or whatever. I don't know to what extent she's being influenced by the fact that she's made a bit of a media career out of being one of the doctors who will say whatever crazy stuff you want about how you shouldn't get vaccinated. You should just take zinc or whatever. I do know that back in May, she was one of the doctors who testified before a Texas State Senate committee and said, we have in excess of 4,000 deaths and this vaccine has not been pulled yet, suggesting that the vaccine had killed 4,000 people at that point. But again, making unfounded, no evidence claims of thousands of people being killed doesn't stop you from being brought onto Newsmax. In fact, it might have been the thing that got her on their radar in the first place. So I don't know what her motivation is. But again, if you're gonna be making specific claims about like these organizations not having any guidance, it is on you to at the very least do some Googling or whatever.
And just so you know how it works. Go ahead, sorry.
And really fast, it seems a little bit odd to say that this doc is wrong, this other doctor was on there is wrong for wanting people to get vaccinated. Let's just treat it. It is very rarely the position of doctors that you should just freely get sicknesses, get diseases, and then we'll figure it out. That's not how we approach other things. And I'm nervous to ask, is that how we should have been dealing with polio and smallpox and all that? Because I can't guarantee that she wouldn't say yes at this point. But I think that seems absurd to most people, and it should be seen as just as absurd in this case.
Right.
Sorry, what were you saying?
Well, it's just so stupid that she's like, she's saying it as though the only thing you can do in any pandemic is medications after people get it. That's just totally not how any of those pandemics explicitly have gotten eradicated, if they've gotten eradicated. Like, it's through vaccines. Like, I'm sorry, that's how it works. And then just in terms of how it works and how she gets booked, what happens is she has someone who is advocating on her behalf. She hires a PR firm, and that PR firm blasts out to everyone with like a headline. Like, I get these emails. I don't know how I got on these email lists, but I get the emails that are like, doctor to tell reasons vaccine doesn't work. And then it's just a blurb, and you get them from the same people all day long. And very lazy bookers just go, oh, thank God there's someone, I'll just go to them.
Yeah.
They have them on, that's it.
Yeah, and the thing about those emails is you can't unsubscribe from whatever's causing it. You can only unsubscribe from each individual a-hole. I hate it. Anyway. For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.